OCO. My name is Robert Lewis. I'm here to tell you a scary story. It's getting close to Halloween. I love Halloween. Halloween is one of my most favorite times of the year. The story we're going to talk about is something that happened to a friend of mine. She lived in a house. It's in Tahlequah. And she said when she was a little girl, her mom and her dad had decided they needed to move. The house was too small they were in. They needed to go find a bigger one. So there was this big house. They saw it up on top of a hill. It was beautiful. The mother and father were excited about it. And she said, okay. They get there and the realtor is there to meet them. He's walking around showing mom and dad. And as they walk around the house and they're looking around, she's sitting there and she kind of drifts off. She walks around, looks around the kitchen. She looks around the living room. She noticed in the living room there was this large couch. And this large couch was covered with a sheet. And she's looking at that. She can hear her mother and her father talking to the realtor. And they start to make their way upstairs. They call her and says, we're going to go check up upstairs. You ought to be able to come over and look around and see if you can find a bedroom. So she ran upstairs, looked around, saw her room that she might have. She liked it. It's kind of big. Comes back downstairs because she's getting bored. She's a young girl. Mom and dad are still up there talking, and she can hear them upstairs walking around. And then she said, I heard this. Psst. So she looks up. She looks around. Psst. And it's coming from behind that couch. She peeks around. And behind that couch, she sees a head stick out. It's a little boy. The little boy's going, psst. So she goes over there and gets closer. When she gets closer, he's sitting there and he's on the floor. She noticed that he seemed to be wearing overalls. And that's about it. Didn't have any shoes on. But he had a wooden top. And she was specific about it. So old wooden top. She was wrapping leather around it. He'd take it. He would spin it as fast as he could. When he spun it, he would laugh and giggle and watch it spin around. It'd land. He'd pick it up and roll it back up. Show her how to do it. Spin it again. Make it dance. And so she's sitting there watching him. She hears her name called. So she gets up and she starts to leave. That little boy's looking at her. And so she waves goodbye to him. He waves back. She walks off. Leaves the couch, sees her mom and dad are coming down the stairs. They shake hands with the realtor and they all leave. She gets in the car. They're driving down the road and the dad's talking to the mother saying, I like the house. It's a good house. It's right close to a good school too. Mother says, it's big. I like it. I like the kitchen. I like my room. I like the master bedroom. Turned and looked at the little girl. What about your room? Did you like it? She said, I like it. It's a nice big place. Did you like the house? She said, yes, I did. Had fun with the little boy. Mother and father both looked at each other and said, what little boy? And she said, there's a little boy that was out there. He's playing back behind that couch. I don't know if you saw him or not. The father looks at the mother and says, maybe the realtor has a son. Brought the little boy here. That's nice. Brings the little boy, plays with our daughter. So we'll talk about some more. So that evening, to talk some more and more about it, decided that that's the house they need. That's the one they're going to get. So the next day, they called the realtor. Say, we want that house. And so he calls them down, says, come on down, all excited. Let's sign the papers to get it all situated. So they're sitting in the office, they're signing. And so as they're leaving, father turned and looked at the realtor and says, oh, thank you so much for bringing your son. The realtor says, what are you talking about? The mother says, your son played with our daughter. She loved him. She thought he was really nice. And the dad says, yeah, he's a good boy. The realtor looked at him for a little bit and says, I don't know what your daughter saw because I'm not married and I don't have any children. And I checked the house before we got there and there was nobody in that house. My friend moved into the house. And she said for a number of years that little boy kept showing up. Odd times. And usually she's the only one in the house when that would happen. She began to notice something. The fact that his clothes remained the same. He's always in overalls. Didn't have any shoes on. And he always played some old game. Games that kids don't play anymore. They play like video games and things like that. But a long time ago, they had like old games like hide and seek and mumbly peg, where they throw a peg stick into the ground. That top. So one time she came down and he was showing a game of jacks. And jacks had these little like stars set there and they toss a little rubber ball that bounces. And you got to figure out how many jacks you can pick up in between that bounce. Kids don't play that anymore. But one day she's sitting there and she's getting older. And she began to think about that little boy. And she thought, I'm getting older. Things are changing for me. He's not getting older. He's not changing. He's always in the same clothes. So when she's getting about 3 or 4 years later, she's becoming a teenager. She's studying in her room. She hears that same familiar sound. Psst! And she looks up. Through the crack in the doorway, she can see his face, and he's like, psst. He's like motioning for her. She looks at him, closes her book, and says, I'm sorry. I don't think I can play with you anymore. The little boy looked at her for a second. Oh, okay. And he walked off. She gets up, she grabs the door, and she jerks it open. When she jerked it open, there was nobody there.